Before we quit for today, I want to share with you a personal word in regard to all this. I had begun studying end time things in the fall of 1990, and for several months into my study, it was not clear to me when the rapture took place. Most of the material that I was reading was pre-trib, meaning that the rapture takes place right before the beginning of the 70th week of Daniel. And I really didn't know if that was right or not. I was just open to whatever God was going to show me in the Word. But by the spring of 1991, I had become convinced that what the Word teaches is that the church will be here during at least part of the Great Tribulation. And I was very concerned for the church. And it was a Sunday morning, I think in June, and I was really seeking the Lord. Lord, how are you going to take care of your people at this time? Are you wanting your people to stockpile food and provisions, or are you going to take care of them supernaturally? And it was early in the morning on a Sunday, and my family was all in bed yet, and I was up outside on our deck, and I had the Bible with me. And as I prayed about this, the Lord led me to the book of Mark. And that's what I'd like to share with you right now from the book of Mark. You remember that there were two supernatural feedings that Jesus had in his ministry. The feeding of the 5,000 and then the feeding of the 4,000. And that day the Lord led me to Mark chapter 8 and to the feeding of the 4,000. And I read quickly through that feeding, which I was already somewhat familiar with. But it was what followed that the Lord drew my attention to. After they had sent the people away, he and the disciples got into a ship and came into the parts of Dalmanutha, and the Pharisees came forth and began to question with him, seeking of him a sign from heaven and testing him. And he sighed deeply in his spirit and said, "Why does this generation seek after a sign? Truly, I say unto you, there shall no sign be given unto this generation." And he left them and entered into the ship again and departed to the other side. Now the disciples had forgotten to take bread, neither had they in the ship with them more than one loaf. And he charged them, saying, "Take heed, beware of the leaven of the Pharisees and of the leaven of Herod." And they reasoned among themselves, saying, "It's because we have no bread." In other words, we blew it again. We are such dorks. We're always forgetting to take care of things. Of course, I could say something here as a woman, but I won't say it, guys. The fact of the matter is that that's just a part of our human condition, is that we're forgetful and we're not always as responsible as we think we should be, and we get ourselves in trouble, blah, 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 blah. Okay. But they're in this thing about, oh man, all those baskets. We had 7 baskets of food left over, and we did not bring one of them with us. And when Jesus knew how they were thinking in response to what he had said, he said, "Why are you reasoning because you didn't bring bread along? Perceive you not yet, neither understand? Have you your heart yet hardened? Having eyes, don't you see? And having ears, hear you not? And do you not remember? When I broke the 5 loaves among 5,000, how many baskets of leftovers did you take up?" And they said, 12. "And when I broke 7 loaves among 4,000, how many baskets full of fragments did you take up?" And they said, 7. And he said, "Then how is it that you still don't get it?" Okay, now, I was familiar with this scripture because God had taught me from it before in a way that blessed me so much, because what he had taught me was, I'm not limited by your human weakness. Your forgetfulness, your whatever, the things that we miss because we're just not always on top of our game. He said, that's never a problem for me. My only problem is with people's hearts, when their hearts won't go straight with me, when, like we were just talking about, they won't receive the truth. They won't let my word work in them so that they can be brought into a relationship of trust with me. But if you trust me and you're walking with me, your human foibles are not a problem for me. Hardly anybody remembered to bring bread to that gathering in the wilderness. And the lack was not a problem. We started out with 7 loaves, and we had 7 baskets left over after 4,000 men, which would make it probably another 4,000, 8,000 women, 8,000 altogether, and there were probably at least 12,000 people there. And they had food left over. And he said, don't you get it? And he said, I'm not talking about you forgetting something. I'm talking about issues of the heart, where people put up barriers against me so that I can't do for them what I want to do. And so the Lord was speaking to me about the thing I was praying about the end times. And he was saying, the most important thing will be the hearts of my children, and that their hearts are tender toward me and trusting, and that they will let me do for them what I am able to do, to care for them in every situation. Okay, so I'm thinking about that, and this little whiff of a breeze comes along and lifts one page of my Bible and flips it over. And I look down, and there I am in Mark chapter 6, the feeding of the 5,000. So, and again, it was not just the feeding, but it was the incident that followed that feeding that the Lord really spoke to me through. And that begins, and that begins in verse 45. They had finished eating, and they had gathered up the leftovers into 12 baskets. And it says, verse 45 of Mark 6, and immediately he constrained his disciples to get into the ship and to go to the other side unto Bethsaida, while he sent away the crowd, the people. And when he had sent them away, he departed into a mountain to pray. And when the evening was come, the ship was in the midst of the sea, and he was alone on the land. And he saw them toiling in rowing, for the wind was contrary unto them. And around the 4th watch of the night, he came unto them walking on the sea. And he would have passed by them, but when they saw him walking upon the sea, they supposed it had been a spirit, and they cried out. For they all saw him and were troubled. And immediately he talked with them and said unto them, Be of good cheer, it is I, don't be afraid. And he went up unto them into the ship, and the wind ceased, and they were sore amazed in themselves beyond measure, and they wondered. They wondered. That's just what the people will do at the works of the Antichrist. Isn't that interesting? It's when you see something that you know is amazing, but you can't quite figure it out yet. They wondered because they considered not the miracle of the loaves, for their hearts were hardened. So there was a way that the disciples were not really seeing what was going on yet at this point. But what the Lord said to me was, he said, the ship is like the church. And he said, I have commanded the church and the believers to go over to the other side. In other words, they are here on the earth, walking out their pilgrimage on the earth, sailing in the ship of the church across the sea of the world until my return, my coming, and I have gone away to be with my Father on the mountain in heaven. And I've given them a command to cross over. And he said it has often been difficult because the enemy blows a contrary wind. He does not blow a wind that helps get them to where they're going, but there's opposition from the enemy. And so I'm distracted by the beauty of that verse, verse 47. And when evening was come, the ship was in the midst of the sea, and he was alone on the land. we're in the midst of the sea yet. And he knows that we're toiling and rowing because of the contrary wind. But about the fourth watch of the night, the fourth watch is the period of time between 3 and 6 a.m. And it's the darkest time of the night, right before the dawn. And we know that the dawn is coming of a new day when Jesus returns. And so this is at the end of the age when it's the darkest out. And the job of rowing and getting to the other side is the most difficult. There's the most opposition. And Jesus comes to them walking on the sea. In other words, he comes to them supernaturally. And it says he would have passed by them. And the Lord impressed on me that as the church is toiling at the very end, they're toiling, finishing, completing the Great Commission, and things are difficult and there is much opposition. He said, I will be there, coming to my people in a supernatural way, with supernatural ability available to them. But I won't force it on them. I'm not going to bring it automatically upon them. It says he would have passed by them. But he puts himself within range of sight. And they cried out to him. Now they cried out in fear. But what the Lord was ministering to me was, if my people will have a heart to let me into the situation, to look to me and let me into their need, I will be more than enough. I will do what I did with these loaves. And so he was answering my question, will it be by stockpiling stuff or will it be supernatural? And he said it will be both. He said, just like I had an individual or two in each situation that had remembered to bring supplies, I will have people at the end that will have supplies. And when they offer them up to me, just like the boy with the fishes and loaves brought them to Jesus, and he lifted them up and blessed them, and then there was more than enough for everybody. He said, that's how it will be. When they offer up to me what they have at the end to share with others, then I will multiply it, and there will be more than enough. But the key and the secret is that my people let me into the boat. That they remember to trust me. That they remember how great my ability is. That they don't just think they have to suffer, but they trust me and let me in because their hearts are tender and their hearts are not hard so that it all goes right past them, what he would be willing to do. But in tenderness of heart, they allow him to be all that he wants to be for them, so that even in that situation of extremity, when buying or selling won't be possible in the normal way because of his people not taking the mark, he knows how to care for his people, and he will care for us if we will have that kind of a heart toward him. And of course, that's what he's always wanting from us. That's his work with us even now today in our daily lives, is are we trusting him with the issues we're facing? Or are we just chugging along on our own, doing the best we can and forgetting that he's so ready to help in every situation? We're all learning that, aren't we? A greater dependence on him day by day. And learning that today and walking that way today is an important way that will help us to be prepared when we go through difficulties in the future. God bless you. And that's the end of our teaching for today.